Ireland was free and Catholic till the end of the 16th century, when it was invaded by the Tudors, the Protestant rulers of England. The conquest was later completed by the Protestant champion King William of Orange. During the conquest and the years after, England settled the troubled province of Ulster with thousands of Protestants, many of them from Scotland, to keep the Catholic natives down. Thus it was England that created the problem of Ulster. They were given independence in 1922, but not completely. Britain couldn't hand over the whole of Ireland as the Protestants in the north threatened rebellion, so the country was partitioned. The 6 counties in the north formed the province of Ulster, which remained inside the United Kingdom, and in which 1 million Protestants effectively ruled 500,000 Catholics.
Chances are very slim indeed, because the British government are trying to force the people of Ulster to have people in their cabinet who actually want to break the link between Great Britain and Northern Ireland. And the fact that the people of Ulster, through their representatives in the convention, have already made it clear that they don't want such people in the cabinet means that the chances of success are almost nil.
Do you see any chance of the convention reaching an agreement?
Well, we're prepared to make every effort to reach an agreement in the convention, but judging by the speeches already made by leaders of the Loyalist coalition, rejecting the terms that the Secretary of State has laid down, I would say that I would be more hopeful than optimistic. The chances are rather that agreement will not be reached.
If the government were to call new elections for a new parliamentary assembly, what would the likely outcome be?
Well, I think the likely outcome at this moment of time would be that we in the treble, you see, would actually lose, because last year, when we were at the crest of the wave, we only got 54% of the votes. And in the meantime, the treble, you see, have expelled 4 members, Mr. Craig and 3 of his colleagues. And the fact that they are now with the SDLP and the UPNI and the Northern Ireland Labour Party and the Alliance Party seems to me that they would be able to muster over 50% of the votes. And that's why I say that on the basis of the existing convention report, it's quite probable that the SDLP would be in cabinet of their own right as a result of the will of the people of Northern Ireland. But certainly we in the treble, you see, would not be in cabinet with them. We would then play our democratic role as Her Majesty's loyal opposition.
I said at the time, when I had to announce the Cabinet decision to the House of Commons that we were going to suspend Stormont, that it was the most difficult decision which we as a government had to take between 1970 and 1974. But we took it in order to achieve a better solution as a form of government, not to establish direct rule as a form of government for Northern Ireland.
I would point out, of course, that we've been living under direct rule, and we have seen that that is not a solution, and we have seen the amount of violence that exists under direct rule, because direct rule will be rejected fundamentally by all sides, and will tend to leave the field to paramilitary organisations and tend to lead to a serious escalation of violence.
Party politics would cease to exist in Northern Ireland, and the vacuum would quickly be taken up once again, as it was the last time that there was a vacuum, by the paramilitaries on both sides. And so you would have a new ball game in which the British government would unfortunately find themselves sinking even further into the bog of Irish politics and coming into confrontation with the paramilitaries. And I think it would, in that situation, create a developing crisis of security and the loss of life and property.
Doesn't an indefinite period of direct rule mean that we should probably have to face an indefinite period of violence in the political vacuum?
Yes, I think that is probably the conclusion one would have to draw. I think that it would mean that the IRA, the provisional IRA, would also make up their minds that they must have a further big push, really from the point of view then of trying to get us out altogether. Well, the circumstances would have to be that because of the continuation of violence in Northern Ireland, casualties to the forces, casualties to civilians, public opinion in the rest of the United Kingdom said we just can't go on with this any longer. We must force a government to withdraw the forces and really let the Irish sort it out for themselves, or as I said in the House of Commons, fight it out for themselves. Because I've got absolutely no doubt that that is what would happen. I don't see how the Republic of Ireland could stand on one side. I think, too, that they would immediately go to the United Nations. You might then very well get a proposal for United Nations forces to go in. a British government would have the right of veto in the Security Council. But if you'd got chaos and civil war in Northern Ireland, would they really be in a position, having withdrawn British forces, to veto United Nations forces going in to try to keep some sort of peace?
I think the consequences of a rapid withdrawal might be so bloody, almost like the Lebanon, that British public opinion just wouldn't stand for that degree of complicity if we simply washed our hands of it. Now, admittedly, and I say this in Northern Ireland, I think the real wish of most people in Britain is that Northern Ireland, perhaps the whole of Ireland, would sink into the Atlantic Ocean. This is perfectly clear, but while it refuses to sink into the Atlantic Ocean, I don't see we've got any realistic method of withdrawing the army until there is peace.
The argument for British withdrawal is that it will knock the prop from underneath the loyalist population, and they will sit down with the rest of the island and agree on our future. To anyone with any sense looking at Northern Ireland today, that is not a very realistic assessment of the situation, and that would not be the likely outcome.
Is civil war a real possibility?
Nobody who lives on the islands of Britain or Ireland wants to see civil war. Least of all Republicans. People have talked about a bloodbath in the event of Britain indicating our intention of getting out of Ireland. But let's just look at it for a moment and ask, whose blood is going to be in the bath? Well, I would say, first of all, the blood of the nationalist minority within the 6 counties who have suffered the most casualties and who will suffer the most casualties in that type of situation. This is a situation to be avoided at all costs, and it's something that the Republican movement will endeavour to avoid at all costs. At the same time, of course, preparations must be made to meet that type of situation should it eventuate, but it is something that no Irishman, and I'm sure no Englishman either, wishes to see.
If there were a civil war, who would win?
I'm not prepared to engage in the discussions of who wins civil wars. The answer to that is clear. Nobody wins a civil war. Everybody loses.